Hi, welcome to another episode of Reptile Fight Club. Thanks for joining us. Tonight we've got a special guest, Nathan Barretto. Am I pronouncing that right?
Yes, sir.
Okay, welcome to the show. Happy to have him on. He came out with a suggestion, so yeah, we wanted to have him come and fight that topic. So welcome to Reptile Fight Club. Of course, Mr. Rob Stone's here as well, so always good to see Rob and chat with him. So good times.
Ahoy, hoy.
All right. Well, how's life in the reptile world? Things going well? You've got a herp trip coming up, Rob?
Yeah, that's true.
A little mix up,
I guess. A little mix up. We had put back last December into January. I put some tentative dates out there, and I guess I hadn't clarified that, the dates had been pushed back a week as a matter of life going forward or whatever, different permutations and things. So we had two people from our 4-person party show up a week early. There were a couple warning signs in hindsight. I think it was already too late at that point, but nevertheless, they've been out for the last 4 days, and they're taking the long way home today, trying to get in a few more things. And then Monsieur Wolf and I will follow it up next week and see if we can't do them one better, either with species or counts or whatever. But yeah, trying to give them advice throughout. And then they've gleaned some little interesting tidbits and things. So yeah, it should be good.
They found some good stuff out there. A few things that I haven't seen on my 2 trips out there, but
definitely raises the stakes for me.
Yeah,
absolutely. Right. So we'll see.
That copperhead was pretty stellar.
Yeah, that was
looking.
Cool. A little, nice. Probably a yearling or so, a last fall or something like that. But and then the lepidus, obviously the point of the venture. At least it is for me, right, relative to my U.S. crotalus count.
That brings Dustin up to the 20s, so he's joined the 20 club.
Right,
20 species of crotalus.
Is he counting that the Enyo though?
No, I don't think so.
Okay. Yeah, I just wasn't sure. We gotta sit there and actually
need to standardize.
What I should do is make a checklist. We gotta have a standard thing that we can work against.
Have a verified stamp date and time when you saw it, and a verification by Bobby Pebbles.
Third party verification.
There you go. Make it official. Have it on a shirt so you can check it off when you find it. Yeah.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah, so, Nathan, we're Rob kind of started this competition to find all the U.S. crotalus species, so we're kind of working our way through those. And he's gone on a couple more trips that I wasn't able to make. So he's are you 23 out of 27 or 24?
Yeah,
23.
Yeah, hoping to get to 24.
Yeah. So we
You're
missed
counting American species, or
yeah, it's only U.S. crotalus forms, so it's basically what's in the Rubio book plus Atracaudatus, but within crotalus, Cistrus being its own thing. So I've only seen one of those at this point. So that'll be extra. Then all the U.S. venomous. So we have all these different approaches and numbers and all these different things. But yes, relative to 27, we're just talking about basically it's the Rubio book plus Atracaudatus, the canebrake being different than timber.
Yeah.
Well, that'll keep you busy.
Yeah. Yeah. It was kind of an Ersatzplan since we weren't able to go to Australia, it was, hey, let's go find all the crotalus in the US. So fun little friendly competition and that Rob came up with, and he is leading the pack. So that's good.
Right. Yeah. Well, yeah. And certainly unsurprisingly, the one that wouldn't surprise you is, I don't know. We'll see if that winds up being the last one or not. Certainly we're going to try and put some work in to at least start our efforts towards seeing one of those. And then actually Northern Pacifics and then the Blessed Atracaudatus are the last one, save Lep. So.
And Obscurus, right? Oh, that's what.
Well, that was the unstated. Yes.
Oh, okay.
Does it count if you find it in Mexico, even though it's an American croat?
Yeah, we'll cross that bridge when we come to it, okay. Right? So I know the group had gone down there, the zoo group and all that. They were going down there this past weekend or whatever, and I had tried to talk my way onto that, but my connection would have been was already a second party invitee, that sort of thing. But I know that Chris and maybe Nathan too were going down there with that based on the work that they had put in. And he and I have been talking about the Palencios a lot over the last week before he had taken off. So yeah, been looking at that really intently and hope to get in a couple quick jaunts to start learning what that looks like and entails.
Yeah.
Have you been down that way?
I'm not. Okay. I have a friend who lives in Tucson and goes down there a lot, and he's really convinced me to try it out sometime. So hopefully soon.
Has he found them?
Oh, there you go.
He's not found Obscurus, no. But he's found some crazy stuff. He just pulled out a Alvarez eye.
Oh,
sent me a picture of yesterday.
Really?
Very cool.
In the U.S.
No.
Down in
Mexico. Yeah,
Gotcha.
In Mexico,
Okay. That's cool. That would be neat to see those in the wild for sure. Yeah,
absolutely.
Yeah, we tend to miss them when we go down to southern Arizona. Miss out on the.
I know. I still have to see that Gila. Right.
Yeah.
So we've seen the Utah jobs, but not the Arizona ones.
I've only seen them that one time when I went out with Frank Reedus and saw like 5 of them in an afternoon.
Right.
Yeah, I got one this year. Was last year.
Yeah. Well, when we were out there last time, they were saying this is a Gila year. We're seeing them everywhere. They're all over the place, and we still missed out on seeing them. But
I think we didn't target it or focus it where we would have.
Well, we kind of did. I mean, in one of the areas. Yeah.
Sure. Well, but I'm saying, okay, one morning. I mean, that's that's not much of a targeting. Fair. But the funny thing to that point, right, is we have been to the place you're talking about where we could have seen him several times. We have put in time there, and I sent Dr. Zach Loafman out that way, and sure enough, they found him within 5 minutes, and then he just saw another one. This possibly at the same spot. I would imagine at the same spot, given where the conference was and all of that. So maybe someday. It's not always the ones you expect that are the last ones.
Yeah, he wasn't down for the lizard. He was down there for some bug conference, wasn't he, Dr. Loafman? Yeah,
he was out in Tucson or something. Yeah, so maybe it was a different place. I don't know. I was imagining it was the lizard thing.
Down in Well, did he?
Yeah, but that wouldn't be.
Yeah, but Steve was down there for the lizard conference, and he's out herping. He invited me. He's like, "Yeah, I'll have a hotel room. You can come stay with me." And I'm like, "I don't have the time off. I can't get it off of work." So it was a bummer. Yeah, I would have liked to have been out there herping with him. Yes.
Next week's venture, you put the kibosh on that as well.
I know, yeah. I mean, West Texas versus Southern Arizona. I'd pick Southern Arizona. I think.
Oh yeah, me too. I've done West Texas.
Well, I absolutely agree. That being said, there's stuff that you need to find. I guess the point becomes: is it joy or a checklist? Because there are certainly things on the checklist that need to be done there.
Yeah,
gotta make some sacrifices.
I gotta remove that from my mind and go down again. But I don't know. My buddy Jared's got some land down there, so he invited me out there. Maybe that's a possibility. Herping some private land might be a better option.
I think that probably is more fun. Yeah, certainly. It's been interesting hearing the guys talk about their adventure. And I didn't mean to cut you off there, Nathan. In terms of, were you going to say you've been out? We could talk about the West Texas thing generally.
Oh yeah, I did West Texas back in 2020 for a little over a week, and it was great. But it doesn't compare to Southeast Arizona, especially when it comes to the climate, how comfortable it is. But
absolutely.
When you're camping. So.
Yeah, for sure. Even when you're not camping.
True.
If
it doesn't go below 100 until after midnight,
right.
Down
and if you're in West Texas, you're going to be out late and you're going to be sleeping during the day when it's
hot.
110.
Super baked.
Yeah. Are you finding relatively cool spots, like some rock cover or something to shelter in a cave or something where it's a little cooler, or are you just baking?
In the campground kind of area. Also was able to split a cabin with a friend for some of it, but
yeah, it's brutal out there. Yeah, very high temps. I don't know. It is cool. I did enjoy the trips for sure, but just seemed like a lot of driving, a lot of craning my neck and not seeing much.
Yeah. I think I've got what I need to satisfy, my desire to go out there. I got the Alterna, got
nice.
the Lepidus, the Cuculata.
Oh, nice. I like Cuculata a lot. They're cool especially for a Tantilla.
Right.
Yeah.
I mean, if I were being greedy, I'd go back for the lyre snake, but
yeah,
trying to be realistic.
Yeah, we got the I really like the oh my gosh, the blacktails, the
Ornatus.
Ornatus, yeah, they're really nice. We got one of those, and but the other.
That's what it seemed like was going this week. I mean, shoot, I think they saw a dozen of them of different.
Yeah.
I mean, some that look like molos, basically, and it seems like the Upper Davis ones kind of have that look, I guess. So,
yeah, the ones in the Davis Mountains, they kind of have that more bronzy type of look. I really like the more lowland form. They're like platinum looking.
Yeah.
Those are my favorite.
They're so cool. Yeah, the one we saw was on the wrong side of private land fence, and so I reached over the fence and hooked it over to the common side, and embedded one of the barbed wire barbs in my arm.
Totally worth it, especially since it was your arm.
Yeah, but luckily, he came over pretty well, and then we put him back on the private land after we were done photographing him. But beautiful snake. Yeah, I guess maybe I shouldn't be talking about that. That's probably technically illegal or something. But come find me, coppers. Yeah, airspace violation. Yeah, I didn't go onto the private land. I just reached over to the private land. Everything was returned as found. Yeah, but I'll make it out there again someday, I guess, when I get more time off work, less trips. Yeah, but all right. Well, we're gonna chat about hybridization, and if it's just an evil, horrible practice in herpetoculture and people who do it should be shunned and mocked and pointed at, or if it's a potential tool for creating some interesting and useful pets. So does that sound like a reasonable way to frame it?
Sounds good to me. Yeah.
Okay, so we'll go ahead and let's have you give just a little short introduction, kind of what got you into herpetoculture and what's your place in herpetoculture as you see it.
Yeah, I'm Nathan. I've been keeping snakes, since the moment my parents let me. I was about 12 years old when I got my first.
Nice. What was your first pet snake?
It was a corn snake, and anothuristic corn snake. Had it for a couple months, and it got out of its enclosure and never saw it again.
Did that dissuade your parents from letting you have more? Or?
You'd think it would. They were smart. It would have. But yeah. But I was pretty deep into it real quick. My second snake was actually a green tree python.
Okay.
And then I was kind of hooked on Morelia ever since. I have a lot of other stuff. I've had a lot of other stuff. But Morelia is kind of, what I like. I have some green tree pythons now, some diamonds. Got an inland from you, Justin. Got a Brisbane coastal, pair of bredli. I've got some random, oddball stuff too. I've got a leopard rat snake I'm trying to pair up, and a big black milk snake.
Okay.
And I don't keep as much as I used to. I kind of move every year since I've graduated high school. So it kind of keeps me from breeding and, having as big of a collection that I like, at least as far as breeding groups go. But one day I'll get there. Yeah. I'm also...
It's a double-edged sword, I guess, because if you're breeding stuff, there's less time to go out herping. So
that's true. Yeah. I do enjoy field herping. Yeah. I'd say just as much as I enjoy keeping. I try to herp as much as I can around Arkansas where I live. and I try to take at least one trip a year somewhere
outside,
out of the state. Just
nice.
To go,
Have you seen many of the herps of Arkansas? Some salamanders and stuff like that.
I've seen. So my favorite thing to find is the ring salamander. I don't know, the Ambystoma filiatum. I think they're my favorite Ambystoma ever. Really glad to have them where I live.
That's
and
cool.
They're really unique, and we can find them in the rains in October.
Okay.
So
yeah, that's awesome.
Fall breeding salamander. Yeah. We have cool snakes too. I like to go out for mud snakes. They're probably my favorite snake to target here. And that's behind Atrox. We get Atrox out here, and their ecology is a lot different than out west.
Really?
Yeah, they kind of act more similar to the timbers up northeast. I usually go out in the fall and find them at their hibernacula over there. So
that's cool. Oh, that's awesome. Yeah, sounds like you got some good spots out there. Are they high strung like out west, or?
I don't really mess with them. They're usually out basking, and I just leave them alone. Nice. One of my friends actually did a toxicology study on them and found that the ones in Arkansas are considerably more hot than the ones out west.
Interesting.
They get bigger too. They eat, squirrels and rabbits out here. So they get a decent size bigger than what you see out west. They look a little different too, but it's the ecology of them that I really find interesting, and just how different it is. They're like, like our version of montane here. Pretty much just find them, in the winters on south facing bluffs. And in the summer, just on the foothills of those bluffs. So
that's very cool. Yeah, I love getting into the natural history and kind of just watching and observing the animals and seeing what they're doing. Yeah, it's pretty cool, especially if you've got them in your backyard basically, and you can get out and see them, and it's always cool.
Yeah, it's nice to revisit the same ones every year too.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah,
very cool. All right, well, we're happy to have you on here, and looking forward.
Glad to be here.
Yep. Yeah, looking forward to a good discussion. So, all right, well, Rob and I will flip a coin to see who gets to battle with you today. So, go ahead and call it.
Tails.
And it's tails.
Wow,
man, you're
that's
on a
unreal.
streak. You're on a streak.
That is unreal. I'll have to, send Chuck a message and let him know that it's possible.
Well, he had his streak too. I remember he was winning about every toss, and then
it just came down really hard.
Yeah, then he
never
stopped
to win again.
yeah. It's kind of funny.
All right, fair enough. Well, I think I want to hear you, but I will interject as appropriate. So I will defer to you as the argumentative one with maybe helpful or unhelpful thoughts and insight for both sides. That's always my favorite.
All right, moderator it is. Okay, Nathan, go ahead and call it.
Heads.
And it's heads. I'm the double loser this week, so yeah. What do you think? You pro or con hybridization?
I can go either way on this. I think I'm going to choose anti-hybridization.
Okay. All right. So hybridization is not great for herpetoculture. Okay. And as the winner of the coin toss, you get to either have me go first. You can chuck me, or you can go first yourself.
I will defer.
Okay. Sounds good.
Yeah.
All right. Well, this topic is fresh on my mind. So I'll lead with this one, and it's a pretty good one, I think. I was just listening to our old buddy, Ron St. Pierre, on the, Trap Talk Network. There's a new segment with, David, Levinson. Yep. And he was talking about blue tongue skinks with Ron and also, Ron's significant other. Heather, thank you. My memory here is shot for names for sure, but at least I remembered Ron, I guess. I would feel really bad if I couldn't remember his name, but speaking of which, we'll have him on in a couple weeks. So that's exciting. Anyway, he was talking about they were talking about their blue tongue projects. Cause I think Heather kind of spearheaded. She's kind of done a lot with, the blue tongues and bearded dragons and that kind of thing. So anyway, joint project, they got him. Ron seems to love the system, so he set up the caging and likes that kind of aspect of it and trying to make it work as a commercial success. And then, but anyway, they kind of diverged, especially in the blue tongue world, like crossing, mixing, northerns with easterns has kind of been taboo for the whole, time of blue tongue skink breeding in the United States. So what they've what he coined the term as ulti-mutts. They're going to take the approach of just breeding everything, whatever has a blue tongue, they'll breed it into, these projects. And they've actually been the first ones to produce albinos in the US using this method. So they bred the albino, which is in the eastern blue tongue, into northern blue tongues. And so these, I guess, hybrids or intergrades, I guess, however you want to look at those. I think they're subspecies of the same skinkoides. So they would be intergrades, but breeding those two together, and then also including maybe some of the Eryngia stuff in there for different genetic traits, kind of ball pythoning the blue tongue skinks, but successfully produced albinos, which, people have been working with them for probably more than a decade or almost 2 decades now in the United States, and nobody's produced anything from the albino blue tongues. Now, Roger Kramer over in Australia has kind of taken the same approach and has bred kind of really nice blue tongues, but mixing easterns with northerns and some, I don't know if he's included any of the other species or in Australia, but mainly easterns and northerns, and has had some really nice results. And same with Joe Ball, and he may have included some alpines in there. Maybe he just has alpine morphs. But anyway, kind of the idea of hybrid vigor. When you cross 2 species, you get that sometimes more vigorous outcome, stronger offspring. I guess the classic example is the horse and the donkey, and you get a mule, which are taller and, pretty robust and strong. So I don't know. I guess that's kind of what I would lead with, is that, you can have some nice advantages when interbreeding different subspecies or species.
I agree. You can get some, some hybrid vigor through some crossing and hybridization. But when that hybrid vigor becomes so desirable, or even a trend, with something like blue tongues that we can't get anymore, at least of the Australian ones, we may not be able to undo that if that becomes more popular than keeping the pure lines. If those fall out of favor to these, these crosses, these hybrids, do you think that maybe those might be hard to get in the future, or less attainable?
I mean, that's a fair point. And I guess, the argument could be made that point may have already been crossed, and before we knew it, with intermixing different subspecies together. It's really hard to, especially with the Australian stuff, to know if what you have is actually, been kept kind of that subspecies or whatever. I think green tree pythons are a really good example of that, where there was some kind of cryptic speciation there. They all looked the same, so people just assumed, a green tree python's a green tree python, and so they're breeding, Rubiacs and all the crazy, different designers. And then we find out, they're actually different species. They're producing hybrids, So of course they're crazy patterns and colors and all that kind of stuff that may come along with that. But yeah.
some of us, it may not have been so cryptic, but
yeah. Right. I think most people, suspected.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. But with the green tree pythons, thankfully we're able to import those still to this. Like without that, I don't think we would have really had pure green tree pythons, if all we had was what we had, 20 years ago.
Mm-hmm. I do think there are, kind of a subset of individuals who do like
there are.
those
and
localities.
It's growing. Yeah, it seems to be shifting, and
I think whatever is going to go for more money is what's going to be what you're seeing the most of. But,
right.
There's always those people that shun the money and go for the, either the purity or the crazy mixing, that kind of thing. Even if the majority of the people are saying, oh, you're crazy, you're insane. How dare you mix an Eastern with a Northern blue tongue skink here? That kind of thing.
Yeah. I think where I stand on the hybridization thing truly is the more novel the hybrid, the less likely that hybrid is going to end up, encompassing the whole, captive population.
Yeah. Muddying the waters. Yeah.
Right. So no one, like a Carpondro, green tree python, carpet python hybrid. I actually produced a clutch several years ago.
Okay.
And I thought they were really cool. I would like to, make another attempt at that. But I don't think I would do that before I ever bred, an inland to a coastal or something like that. Just because it's less likely to end up, dirtying the waters, so to speak. Especially when you throw in morphs into that. Like, how many times has, like, axolotls, for example, critically endangered species, but the ones that we have in captivity are not pure axolotls. They just bred a bunch of tiger salamanders to, move their morphs over into the axolotl, and now we kind of have a lost. We had our chance at having a pure species in captivity, but chasing morphs, we kind of lost that. So.
That's interesting. I did not know that, as Ed McMahon would say. But that's crazy that they introduced genes from the tiger salamander into there. I guess that I see. I always go back to kind of the idea of, well, it's snakes in boxes. Nobody's going to use those axolotls to repopulate the wild or that kind of thing. So that's kind of the fallback, and that may be the cry of the hybridizer.
Yeah.
And this is a hard topic.
Snakes too.
Yeah, this is a hard topic because I agree with you. I would rather not see this. Yeah,
right.
But
to me, what I look for in my captive snakes is I want a piece of wherever it came from, and in my box, right? So I kind of apply that to morphs as well, and to selective breeding even.
Yeah.
Like, for example, if you took a Palmerston carpet, a locality carpet python, and you bred it so that its offspring eventually looked exactly like every other carpet python out there, is it really a Palmerston?
Well, and that's the question. I mean, once you take it out of the wild and the selective pressures of that area, is it a Palmerston? Right. The same could be. And if you are choosing who it's breeding with, you're keeping the nicest baby or whatever to breed back to each other. Is it a Palmerston? Is it a good representation of that area? And is it having the selective pressures on the pattern and, predation?
Some of that selective pressure is great. Like, more likely to take a mouse in captivity. That's great.
Oh, yeah.
But I like to. I know that I said I want Carpondros a bit ago. That's true.
Yeah.
But, I still, like the look of an inland carpet python that looks just like it came out of South Australia.
Yeah. That's true. And I think for as far as carpets go, inlands are probably the least variable of different subspecies or species, however you want to look at them, they tend to look, once you see an inland, they don't have a huge amount of variation, but there have been some unique genetic, mutations or whatever you want to, variants that have been found in the wild. Obviously the silver pepper is, the most common one over there, but there was a thesis that was, somebody did for their research, was studying inland carpets, and they found this pink inland carpet. It's beautiful. It's just crazy looking. And you would look at that and go, oh, wow. That's a mutation. That's a morph that I would want to work with, So it's kind of a double-edged sword because, once the silver peppers hit, then everybody wanted to mix silver pepper into every other mutation. So you want albino silver peppers and jag silver peppers. And so then by nature of that, you're mixing the different subspecies. And I think morphs are probably more to blame for hybridization or intergradation than anything else. Most people are not just taking a wild caught, producing Borneo bat eaters or something. Somebody did it as a novelty and because they heard maybe they integrate in the wild in some places or, and I think others maybe for curiosity's sake, like breeding a ball python to a woma python, and producing those woma balls or whatever they call them.
Yes. I think a lot of it is just, a curiosity of, like for the novel hybrids, you would never think that two different genera, like a Aspidites and a ball python, could reproduce and create fertile offspring. That's break the rules that you're told in school. So and not just different genera, but like the most basal member of the Pythonidae, which is ball pythons, with the most recently evolved in the woma python. It's pretty amazing. And then some of the offspring are fertile. They can breed, and I think that's kind of always been, the idea behind hybrids is, with mammals, a lot of hybrids are infertile, but that doesn't seem to be the case with reptiles. They may not be as strong. So I some of that hybrid vigor idea might not translate into reproductive viability. And I think, people have struggled with maybe some of the fertility of their hybrids. But, they can still breed, but they're just not. The Carpondros, the males are sterile. Maybe there have been a couple of cases of proven fertility, but the clutch of Carpondros that I produced back when I was in high school, actually, I kept 3 for myself. They all ended up being male, the sterile ones. So I ended up moving those on. One of them is actually in the Carpet Python book, the new one. If you look in the hybrid section.
Okay.
I'm sure you know. It was. That one was my favorite. It was like a navy blue color and yellow.
It's a very cool looking snake for sure.
But I think the sterility is, kind of a blessing in some cases.
That would make it easier. Then it would, then it would be, and almost like a designer pet, where they're not going to breed it, so it's not going to muddy the waters. It would be kind of nice if all hybrids or intergrades were sterile, because then they could make these crazy morphs, but then that would be the end of it. Then I guess then people would have to buy the wild type or the anyway. Yeah. So I get it. There is kind of a supply demand thing, but at the same time, if you're constantly chasing the dollar and you're not working with what you love, I think you're missing some of the point. You know what I mean? Like that kind of goes against my argument a little bit, but
Even, zoos sometimes can be guilty of, this hybridization and like for the sake of genetic diversity in their case, not morphs, but for genetic diversity, there was someone, I don't remember which zoo or which zookeeper I was talking to, but they had some reticulated pythons. And for the sake of genetic diversity, they were breeding, mainlands to dwarf, the dwarf insular type. And then they found out that it's looking like going to be its own subspecies, Malaya Python reticulatus champianus. And now they had to like scrap the project, and now these are kind of useless.
Yeah,
kind of happens a lot, I think.
And that's, taxonomy can play havoc with those kind of things, when they
it's hard to find the line between, preserving the form and, maintaining that genetic diversity.
And especially when we're limited with some things, and I think that the retics are a great example of that, where, they were mixed and matched to produce morphs, and then it became very difficult to find true mainland forms. And once they stopped allowing imports, then it was kind of, a big mess, and it was kind of over at that point to some extent.
There are a handful of people keeping those alive. Some of them have already been lost, but thankfully there are a handful of people that are keeping those alive.
Yep. So there definitely is, both sides to it. But again, I think if you ask 99% of people who keep reptiles are not keeping them and allowing natural selection and, those kind of things, they want to have the prettiest, nicest looking snake that they're going to be interested in, and, that kind of thing. And I think that's, the sad truth is that we just want something nice looking and potentially something that's worth a lot of money. So, people are kind of selling that their morals for that pretty snake,
Yeah. Some of these carpet python hybrid have been popping up in Australia.
Oh yeah.
Mind blowing. Some of these albinos. Yeah. And the thing is,
it almost tempted me to breed an inland into an albino just because they're so nice looking, but I just can't bring myself.
Would you call it an albino inland?
No, I would not. I think that's kind of false representation. Yeah. But I mean, if it's an albino inland, then it's pretty obvious that they did that crossing. But they're not explicitly saying that. Yeah. Yeah, I think one of the nicest carpet pythons I've seen has been like a 7-way cross with diamond, jungle, inland, coastal, everything in it mixed all around, and it was gorgeous. Yeah, some of its siblings, maybe not so much, and I think
like some of those cream jags. Yeah, like the brattle stonewashed, jags.
Yeah, Don
undeniably
Patterson.
Impressive. Yeah,
Don Patterson just hatched out a crazy clutch of really nice looking animals. And if you want a beautiful pet, there you go. I mean, you're not going to find much more. Now, I think the thing that kind of, and again, this kind of goes against my argument a little bit, but once people start crossing and making these crazy, beautiful things, sometimes the prices go up where it makes it look like more desirable than it really is, where people are excited about it for a little while, but then the novelty wears off after a year or two, and then you're just left with, a bunch of crosses that nobody wants or cares about. And if you can't get back to that original, subspecies or species or whatever you're looking at, then that can be a little sad. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. As far as hybrid figure goes, kind of reminds me of, I grow Nepenthes, tropical pitcher plants from Southeast Asia.
Okay.
And the community is kind of split the same way our community is. A lot of people are super into, the pure species as they are found in nature. Yeah. And a lot of people are into the hybrids, and you can, make some crazy looking stuff. Yeah. And it's a lot easier to keep. Like some of the pure species have some really high maintenance needs. Like you got to have an AC on them at night and stuff like that. But the vigor, like, is, like some of these, most of these hybrids you can keep just as a houseplant. Yeah. Just pure species you can't. And you kind of see that same. I'm a falconer as well. I'm an apprentice falconer, and
cool.
Just finished up my first year, and a lot of these guys around me who fly falcons are flying hybrid falcons. Peregrine, Saker, hybrids or pure falcon hybrids, just because they tend to make better falconry birds. I guess it's the same with like, leopard geckos in captivity. Maybe I've never kept a pure form of leopard gecko, but I'd imagine they probably are a little bit more bulletproof just because all that hybrid vigor going on.
Yeah.
And
it seems like, I mean, there is kind of a push for people to bring back and I mean, this is again another case of taxonomy strikes again, where, all of a sudden we find out all these things we've been breeding together are actually different species. And so now there's a push to get all the pure, species from the wild. That can be very difficult in a lot of instances, but, with the help of Europeans, we can make anything happen, it seems.
Right.
But yeah.
And I would love a pair of Iranian leopard geckos. I thought, you couldn't really get stuff like that, and seeing that stuff pop up on my feed, that I can get locality leopard geckos from Iran is, gotta have that. So.
Pretty cool. Yeah, absolutely.
I want to go see him in Iran. I want to go herp Iran.
That's the next best thing.
Right? That would be so cool to get out there and try to find some of those spider-tailed vipers too while you're at it.
Your arachnoides.
Yeah. They're Iran, right? Yeah. Iraq seems to have some nice stuff too. But I met an Iranian guy and really cool guy. But yeah, he was like, oh yeah, if I was welcome in my country, I'd take you out. Show you. He's not going back to his country either. So he's like, they're a little bit on the fanatical side in my town.
Yeah.
So
there was a few years ago, there was some hope that surfers might be able to make it out there, but
yeah. Well, there've been a few groups that have gone out and found them in the wild that,
recently.
You just need a non-U.S. passport is basically
the I don't think you can go there if you're a U.S. citizen. Like, you're not allowed, right? Yeah. Which is kind of sad. I don't know, but that's the way the world is, I guess. They don't want to deal with consequences if worst case scenario happens, I guess. But,
I'm not sure we do either, but nevertheless.
True. Very true. Yeah. I did see a story about a woman who biked across Iraq and relied. She didn't speak the language. She was from France. She didn't speak Iraqi, and she rode her bike across the country and just relied on the niceness of people. And they would take her in and feed her and let her stay at their house, and then warn her about the dangerous areas, and off she'd go again. But yeah, she made it all the way across Iraq.
I wonder if she found any snakes.
Yeah, right. I don't think she was looking for those. She was looking for kind people, but I guess she found them. But majority of people are pretty good. It's just the 1%ers that the bad actors out there. If you just happen to cross paths with them. Anyway, that's neither here nor there. Yeah. But that would be cool to see the different species. Now, the kind of the opposite way is this Antaresia paper that sunk Stimsoni into children eye, which is pretty ridiculous in my opinion. Other than maybe some of the stuff from Queensland, that was probably warranted.
I'm not too familiar with that paper. I know there are some strong feelings about it. I'll have to educate myself on that.
But I do see people showing pictures of Stimsons and calling them children's and all this kind of stuff. I'm like, come on, guys, we don't have to accept this.
Did that same paper identify the Papuan version as its own species as well?
Yeah,
or was
okay. Which is even more ludicrous. That they were connected 5,000 years ago. So I don't know. Yeah.
And nothing else seems to be different. Right. Between the two.
Yeah. I think if I can bring up another topic, I guess, in favor of hybridization is that, I think this happens naturally. Hybridization events occur all the time in the wild, not at maybe an appreciable level, but they do occur and kind of introduce new genes, new genetics into a population. I think one of the famous examples of that is I can't remember the species, but there's two species, I believe, in New Mexico. When they hybridize, they create a parthenogenic population.
Oh, the whiptail, the aspid
yeah.
yeah.
Did I say whiptails? Anyway, yeah, they're those whiptails will hybridize and produce a parthenogenic colony, which is kind of interesting. A weird thing that you wouldn't anticipate as an outcome. I mean, our own species is a good example of different species kind of coming in and going out, and if you look in your own DNA, you might find several different Homo species. So it's kind of an interesting concept.
Yeah. Hybridization as a facet of evolution kind of always fascinated me. But the question is, can you copy that in captivity?
Well, yeah, that's definitely a fair question. Yeah, right.
Because even intergrades, where two species, overlap in range, and that overlap part of that Venn diagram, becomes just a kind of a gradient. Intergrade means between grades. So these hybrids of varying degree. You can't take one species or one member of each, respective species and create that same thing in captivity, at least in one generation. And I seem to see a lot of people think that, it's like a diamond and a coastal. They breed in the wild, so I can just create the same thing by breeding this probably not the same species coastal with the diamond python and end up with the same thing.
They're using northern coastals, which are technically jungles.
Right.
Yeah. But I think if you were to breed a Brisbane with a diamond and you kept some of those offspring and bred those back to each other, you probably end up with something similar to the rainforest diamonds or whatever they call the intergrades. And, in the intergrade zone, it's not necessarily coastals waiting to find diamonds. It's the intergrades breeding with the intergrades and kind of strengthening that intermixing. And I think the fact that there is an intergrade probably represents that diamonds and coastals are probably different species. I would go so far to say, if you have a noticeable intergrade zone, that probably denotes that they are two different species. And the genetics seem to back that up a bit, even though nobody wants to really go down that road.
Right.
Yeah.
And this doesn't help my point at all, but it would probably help the genetic diversity of Brisbanes in the United States. So.
Yeah, that's true. I mean, the how diverse Brisbanes are in Brisbane, there's just so many different looks, and we've kind of refined it to say this is what Brisbanes look like. We want that.
Yeah. And from what I understand, there's been some semi-serious inbreeding depression of Brisbanes in our American population. So.
Yeah. Well, and again,
for what it's worth, we did find one in Brisbane that looked exactly like our textbook Brisbane. So it's not to say that they're not there. In the same way that the gelatins, we saw one with the double railroad track with the prototype look. So it's not that our phenotype is wrong. It's maybe that we fixed a phenotype on some of this stuff.
Right. But if we had a bunch of gelatins where they came out not looking like the gelatins that we've seen before, would you think that they're pure gelatins?
Right. Oh, the other one we saw looked like Eric citrus tigers. I mean, it was wild. It was light purple, and this is totally. So if you hatch that out in captivity, I totally appreciate that point. Absolutely.
Yeah.
So if someone had presented a gelatin that looked like a citrus tiger, in the United States, would you say that it could be pure?
I would say that. Other people, having seen one in the wild that looked just like that, other people, I'm sure, would be highly skeptical to the point of farce, probably.
Yeah. Well, I think I would be skeptical just because the ones that we have don't look like that. So it's either
I think you would just ask us
new
about
blood.
our trip. You'd be like, wait, when did you go?
When did this come into your collection? Yeah, that's I mean, I think that's fair. I mean, from what was collected and what we have in captivity, I know that a lot of the stuff that did have locality, I mean, you've also got the other side of like, it's illegal. And so, they weren't sharing that information like, oh, I collected this on the road to, Tully Gorge or whatever, they weren't giving
an untrustable source.
Yeah. Exactly. And so they and then when jungles were all the rage and they were really expensive snakes and you really wanted that yellow and black animal. And so that's where everything moved towards. And so anything that wasn't yellow and black just kind of got pushed off to the side or sold it to a pet shop or whatever, and the people who were buying and breeding only wanted those, nice yellow and black ones. And I mean, I still love a really nice yellow and black jungle carpet. Don't get me wrong. Like that's my favorite, probably I would say my favorite snake if my, feet were held to the fire, but I love black and yellow jungles, and I've seen jungle in the wild that was very nice black and yellow, just a beautiful snake. So I mean, they happen, but yeah, once we follow that popularity, we limit what we can do with them, and it matches the wild type less and less and less. Like you said, if you keep inbreeding and breeding for a certain trait, it's really difficult to go back and try to get a different trait, because then, all of a sudden, black and yellow jungles, everybody has them, nobody cares. So the price goes down. So then nobody wants to produce those. Now everybody wants black and white jungles. And so now we're going to, line breed until we get a black and white jungle. And now that's the big popular thing. And maybe some of the ancestry of the founders was a little questionable, maybe, I don't know. And so, we end up with some really nice looking snakes. But again, what does that represent? Does that represent a locality? Probably not. Like Rob said, some will look like that. Others will not, and if we don't have that full diversity, do we actually have the real thing? Once you take it out of the wild, it kind of technically ceases to be that thing, because it doesn't have the natural selection, the natural pressures, the natural cycles, all that kind of stuff. The gut, this is a weird thing. I mean, this is kind of out there a little bit, but I mean, our gut contents shape a lot of what's going on, with our form and function and our vigor to say, to put it that way. So, I mean, are you giving your jungle dirt from Australia, and is it getting the correct microbiome in its gut? Of course not. So we definitely lose something when we take something into captivity. And if you really want to appreciate a wild jungle, you just got to fly to Australia and go watch them in the wild. I mean, that's kind of the bottom line, I think.
It really comes down to why you want to have what you have. Like, do you want a pure whatever, so that you can say it's pure, or that, it looks like something that you could find in the wild?
Yeah.
That would be it for me, is I want to be able to imagine that that's a wild snake, at least based on its morphology.
Yeah.
But once you start adding, hybridization in there, or morphs, or extreme selective breeding, that's where you kind of lose me a little bit.
Yeah. So. And fair enough. I mean, I think there was that opportunity a few years back to get all the different localities of jungle carpets. There were Tullys available and Palmerstons available, and Rockhamptons, and all sorts of different localities that came in from Europe. And I don't see a lot of those today. I don't see people advertising, their pure Rockhamptons, and frankly, some of them look just like a wild jungle. They looked like a typical jungle that you'd see out in the wild, that are not bright yellow and black, and are kind of muddy and might be a little bitey or pissy. So you can find those, but people just they didn't take off because they weren't bright yellow and black and they weren't pretty to look at. And so people kind of left them by the wayside, which, again, speaks to our need for pretty snakes in boxes and not necessarily, what's natural or what's wild type. Now, that's not to say nobody produces them, because there are some people still working with those wild and natural forms and locality forms, but they might be pushing them to have a bolder stripe or to have more yellow or more white or whatever. The gelatins, we're not pushing for a gelatin to look like a citrus tiger. We're pushing for a gelatin to be, that black and white, cool looking, railroad track animal. So that's the challenge, I guess, is you're going to have a hard time getting people behind you in the purity, the strictly, and frankly, if you really wanted to do it that way, you probably should just throw a group into a very large outbuilding, a 40-foot building and just let them do what they do and breed with who they want to breed with and throw some predators in there and maybe not go that
or at the very least have like what they do with dog breeds or horse breeds, is have a standard and then look and see what conforms to that standard. Maybe try to preserve at least the morphology bit of it. I don't know.
Well, we kind of do that anyway. We say this is what a gelatin should look like, because that's our limited experience of what gelatins look like from what was imported into Europe and what was line bred and what we got in the end, or what the Australians showed off as a really nice gelatin became the archetype, and that's what we want to conform to.
Yeah, I do think there was kind of I think it was Nick, a missed opportunity with his Ivory Jungle project, where he was trying to introduce new blood to his Ivory Jungle project. And I think if he just would have put a gelatin jungle in there, it wouldn't have set him back as much with the yellow. But, of course, don't call them gelatin jungles. But,
right.
That was the same.
I found out too, there's one area that was really great to herp in Cairns. They actually shut down, they put a gate on the road. Last time I was in Australia, I was trying to go herp there and there's a gate there now. I'm like, what the heck? I just want to go herping. And so we just went back to the hotel because that was the best spot, And I found out that the Fish and Wildlife people in Australia would put any confiscated jungles, they just release them on that road. And so the jungles you would see there would be from all over, jungle territory where they would confiscate them from people trying to sneak them out of the country or whatever. And so, even that spot is not a locality because it's just all the localities being thrown into that one area. I always had kind of the theory that if you took a coastal, and brought it up into the rainforests of northern Australia and put it in a paddock out, a fenced in area, then you'd probably wind up with a bunch of jungles after a while, just that selective pressure to look that way. So yeah, it's an interesting thing. We want to label, we want to put things in boxes, we want to put things in categories, so it becomes very difficult for us to kind of see species as kind of a fluid, it kind of ebbs and flows over time, and now not human lifespan. So of course we want to, have a label for something while we're alive, but that label could easily change in the next 1,000, 10,000, whatever years,
Right.
Yeah.
Those intergrades, those rainforest diamonds.
Yeah.
You don't have to justify their existence by saying they're intergrades or whatever. They just are what they are, and as a result of nature.
Yeah, exactly.
Despite there being what we call pure populations to their north and south.
Yeah.
It's just us trying to put a label on things and those not falling into what we consider our labels. So.
Yeah, and going back to the jungle example, if Nick wanted to put gelatins in his ivories, he'd actually be introducing variegata into. If we,
I guess that's true.
What we put in
about that.
The second edition, right?
It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter if they don't look anything like
right.
what they do in the wild. So.
Yeah, exactly. Again, it's snakes in boxes. So to get hung up on these things is, sometimes counterproductive, but sometimes has definitely has a valid point, and
Right.
we should probably. There needs to be some folks from both sides, and I think too, anytime I think this is kind of a cautionary tale. Anytime I've chased the more for the money or whatever, it usually hasn't worked out great, and I haven't enjoyed it as much, because then you have the idea like, okay, I bought this animal for X amount of dollars and I want to recoup that investment. And so, then you're stressed about, I got to produce these and I got to make these. And, my $10,000 pair of het albino Darwins finally produced like 8 years after I bought them, and I sold the babies for a whopping, $300. So, I did not recoup my investment. So, that stress and all that kind of stuff that went along with that, just, and one clutch, and that was it. I did hold back a couple albinos so I could prove that I did something with that pair, but yeah, it's, not a great return on investment. So I would not tend to recommend looking at snakes as investments. Look at them as living creatures that, can be wonderful and fascinating in captivity. And I don't have anything against people keeping snakes in cages as long as their needs are met and they're, giving them the best life they can give them, and taking care of them, and they're excited about them and all that kind of thing. So, and I think nothing can depress you more than spending a lot of money and then having that not pan out, or, that kind of thing. And
a lot of people just end up leaving it entirely.
Yeah, exactly. And just let them squander, or let them. So, yeah, that's always hard to mix living things with dollar amounts. I don't know. I think everybody should have a project that is worthless in regards to monetary value, but they find pure joy in. I think mine are the shovel-nosed snakes. I love shovel-nosed snakes. They're such cool little snakes that will never, they are somewhat popular. I think people like them, but I just want to keep them to have a cool snake. I'm not looking to be the next Kyanactus breeder, but they're beautiful animals, and I really enjoy how they interact with me and how they, chase their crickets around or their roaches around. Really fun snakes. Yep. Well, have we exhausted it? You got any more points to bring up? Rob, you got anything to add?
The only thing that had jumped out to my mind, right, that I always think about in this context, and Nathan, I think you had hit on this previously, is just sort of the extent to which someone's sort of truth in labeling doesn't really hold any water down the road, right? So that I think about it in the context of Leonis variable king snakes, and the idea that with a couple notable exceptions, if you just bought a random variable king snake based on the variability that they naturally have and the proclivity from the 80s when Mexico largely shut down to the commercial export of reptiles, like you could have no confidence that that actually is purely a Leonis or Theri animal at this point. If you just bought a random one, it's far more likely than not that there's something else in the mix. If you're talking about 30-year captive lineage animals, that no matter what it looks like, that's probably true, with like a couple notable exceptions that were associated with particular confiscations or, locale, highly detailed and maybe only a couple of generations, as opposed to just a generic. If you went to any reptile show and you see a variable king snake there, chances are much better than not that would not align genetically with a wild variable king snake. Whether that actually matters, that's an entirely separate question. It might be solely within sort of the mindset and mentality of you as a keeper, but I think that's undeniably true. Certainly carpets are kind of in that same vein, particularly coastals. I would imagine, kind of in that same vein. But that was the only thing. You'd hit on that, but I really wanted to kind of hammer that home, that I think that's absolutely true. So the idea of, I'm going to be honest about what I'm doing. The second it leaves your hands, that's totally meaningless. And there have been several people who have ideated around specific examples of saying, "Oh, I did that." Nick, even, right? I think Nick, when he was talking that new podcast that's out, I don't know, Justin, if you've listened to it. Eric was just on there. I don't know the fella's name. It's something like the Idiot and the Snake Keepers. I'll look it up here in the interim. I'll find it, and then we can give it a proper mention here at the end before we log off. But I think Nick himself on there was like, "Oh, the first clutch of carpets that he had bred was a Diamond Coastal Integrate or something," and he sold the surplus to a pet shop, and then it had gone out as a pet and wound up being returned to the pet shop. Point was, 9 years down the track, he saw one of those animals, recognized it as being, "Oh, this went to a pet home and then was brought back because the person moved or whatever," and it was being sold as, I think, a jungle. It wasn't any of those things, so and he was talking about, he had this whole write-up and they had posted it, there's the whole thing on the cages when he's brought them in and sold them this whole thing. Yeah, well, you can imagine. Go listen for yourself. It's a Nick story. It took a long time. But yeah, I'll look it up and we'll mention it. But yeah, there's no utility to that, especially if we're talking about decades later, all this many days down the track. It's essentially, it might not matter beyond sort of the will, interest, and mindset of you as a given keeper, but just it's farcical to pretend that that actually will be that information will be retained.
Yeah,
right. And even just keeping track of locality and making sure all your stuff is true to locality, whatever that means. Due to potential future taxonomic revision, that's not going to be enough sometimes, because you got to trust someone.
Yeah. Yeah, it becomes a tricky thing. But I mean, as long as you're doing your due diligence and you keep track of, the information you have and you honestly represent it, regardless of, I think at least people can kind of have the, peace of mind that I'm working with this pure subspecies or this pure species. And if it turns out down the road not to be the case, and you have to go back and find everybody you sold the snake to and say, actually, that was, an integrate or a cross between these different localities.
That story with Nick's carpet pythons reminded me of there was a scrub carpet hybrid that I saw on Facebook a long time ago. And then several years after that, I saw on Fauna, there was a Boland's carpet hybrid. That was for sale. And it was the exact same snake. And it was supposed to be a southern scrub crossed with a carpet at first. And then suddenly it was a Boland's hybrid. But,
cool. Was it around the same time that Boland's carpet hybrid was produced? So they went, "Oh, they're asking $8,000 for that thing. I'm going to try to do the same thing."
Yeah, I don't think it was that long ago. I think it was just maybe 5 years ago or so that it popped up on Fauna. Some of those Boland's carpet pythons, actually, like you've probably seen, I think Tom Keoghan's photos of them. Yeah. There was one that I saw that actually looked phenomenal. I'll have to throw a picture up on the Discord or something. But I think they use an Aryan Gaia for that mix, and this one makes you wonder what if they used a nice jungle, because it was that good looking. But not sure one of those. I'd rather have pure Boland's, but
well, and I think that was kind of an act of desperation. Like, my Boland's aren't breeding with each other, so is it because the males?
We learned that the males can reproduce just fine.
Yeah, they're fertile. We're missing something in their cycling, or when we're introducing them, or how many males we're using, or whatever, But I think I saw a Boland's clutch this last week. Somebody produced some Boland's. I can't remember.
Yeah, I think over in Europe somewhere.
Yeah. So I mean, people are hitting on it occasionally. It just seems that, I guess, the German fellow has produced them over subsequent years, but not many people have figured them out or gotten a.
Yeah, there are a couple guys out in the Midwest who seem to have it figured out, at least from what I can tell. I have my suspicions, but I'm just some, wannabe Boland's keeper. So, yeah.
So I did find it.
Okay.
So it's both on YouTube and findable on a podcast app, which is very important, if not essential, to calling something a podcast. It's seemingly The Expert and the Idiot, Snake Boy, BOI. But if you look it up, The Expert and the Idiot, hyphen a reptile podcast. Okay. So Eric was on there. Matt Minutolo's been on there. I heard that one. I heard the one with Nick. Steve Cush was on there. Yeah, so a handful of different ones. But
all right, I'll check it out.
Check it out.
It's always good to see new podcasts coming on, especially if they're getting good guests like that, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah. Well, yeah, I think this has been a good discussion and definitely some good topics on both sides. So we'll have to if you think of any other things we missed on, let us know. And yeah, we'll
do. Maybe we'll rehash it out.
There you go. All right. Well, where can people find you?
I'm on Facebook. I don't really post anywhere, but if you search my name, I'll come up.
Okay.
I'm more of a lurker. I always have the idea that I'm going to, into that, but never do. So, but
okay. Well,
if you want to reach out, again, don't know why you'd want to, but
well, I mean, chat with you more about some of your ideas or talk about herping with you or something. I mean, yeah, it's been a pleasure to chat with you on here. So thanks for coming on and thanks for the idea. We appreciate it a lot. I don't know if either of you seen anything really cool this week in herpetoculture. I mean, I brought up Ron's and Heather's success with the albino blue tongues. It's pretty cool. My buddy John Felicity, I think that's how I pronounce his last name. He produced some shingleback skinks. Really cool stuff. I think he got a couple females, got babies from a couple of his aspers, and really awesome looking shinglebacks. So that guy's, I don't know, he put out a video with a little while back. Man, I'm so bad with names. I don't know what's wrong with me. But anyway, he was on the YouTube
with Gary.
Yeah, with Gary Giovanno. Sorry. Yeah. Sorry, Gary. But yeah, really cool setups that he's got. And apparently they're working out for him out in New Jersey. So next time I go to Carpet Fest, I'm going to have to go visit him.
Yeah. So I think when Eric, Matt, and Owen went up to Keith's place, that he was there, and so they were chatting with him and showing him those photos and stuff. Yeah. Mm-hmm. So as you were saying that, I was like, well, how many people could possibly have produced shinglebacks in the last 6 weeks? It's got to be the same guy.
Oh yeah, and he knows Keith pretty well. He was like, "Oh, I'm jealous you get to go herp with Keith in Australia." So that's pretty cool. He's super nice guy, really a great guy. I got to meet him at Tinley, and I kept I'd find out somebody, I breed shinglebacks. Here, you got to come meet this guy. So, but yeah, he's a really nice guy. So one of the good up and comers for sure. But yeah, he's sunk a lot of money and effort and time into these skinks. So yeah, he'll definitely be.
Glad it's coming up for him.
Watch. I know. Yeah, me too. Cause that was a significant investment to get pairs of shinglebacks, and to have that work out is just really exciting to see. So well done, John, and congratulations. Yeah. Anything else cool out there?
Fun species at all.
Yeah. Right. It's nice to see them being produced, though. That's one species I'd love to work with. I mean, when we were in South Australia last October, we saw 40 of them. I mean, they were everywhere. It's so incredible to think these things that, have one or two babies every couple of years are so common and just everywhere. It's amazing. I guess they just must have a long lifespan and produce for a long time, because there was no shortage of them in South Australia in October. It was really cool. And the diversity, oh my gosh, I would love to have worked with some of those. But, yeah.
Yeah, something interesting I saw was those Gonyosoma margaritifers. Is that what they're called? There were some, listed available in the United States, or at least Canada, I think.
Interesting.
That's I don't know my Gonyosoma very well. That's a less
so those are a weird one. And as of a handful of years ago, I'd frame that as never having been in the U.S. So that's super interesting.
Where are they from?
Borneo.
Okay. There's not imports from Borneo, or are there? Does Borneo
not commonly?
Okay.
I mean, it's sort of been on and off and very limited, but part of it is wild. True Gonis don't generally haven't done well. I mean, there's been success, but only, as a war of attrition against, being brought in to be fed to other snakes and stuff like that over time. So
and the Gonyosoma are the Asian rat snakes. Is that
Margaritatum is the specific epithet.
They are they're the third rail, Justin. I don't think you want to start that right now.
Oh, that's right. I know your strong feelings for the yeah. Cool. I don't know. I listened to. I really enjoyed that episode on Trap Talk with David Levinson and Ron and Heather. That was really a good episode. And of course, I think we mentioned Daniel Natouche and his interviews with Kush and
Stephen Cush's podcast.
Yeah,
we'll need to listen to that.
Yeah, nice.
It's really good. There's some wildly interesting bits that he goes into there, particularly around a half hour in. I know I sent it to several people, and truly wild stuff that you would only learn by looking at by cutting open snakes, basically. But super, super interesting. So definitely worth a listen. I definitely listened four different times, decreasing my podcast speed as I went. Let me listen to that again. Hold on. Let me listen to that again. And I still need to listen to it again. So there's a lot there.
Yeah.
We might want to have Young on. Yeah, that'd be cool to have Daniel on. See if we could fight with him a bit on it. Challenge some of his
probe into that a little bit further. It was super interesting. So
for sure. I would be very interested in seeing that published. I mean, he should. That's doesn't seem to be a well-known thing as far as I've ever heard.
I'm not familiar with it.
I've never run across that at all. So that's a pretty significant finding, which would be really interesting to have to expand our knowledge.
Absolutely.
Now we'll really have to listen to it to know what you guys are talking about.
Yeah. That was on Cush's Corner on the Trap Talk Network, and he also did an interview with oh my gosh, Ryan and who's the main trap. I'm so bad. I'm sorry. Anyway, he was on there as well.
Okay.
With MJ. Yeah.
MJ. Okay.
Yeah. I don't know why I can't think of any names tonight, but so it was good to hear him, talking about scrubs as well as green tree pythons. And I mean, I'd heard, he's been on a few podcasts.
Right. He's been on a handful of things. Yeah. He was just on Snake Talk not that long ago, which was good as well.
It was kind of fun to hear Ryan kind of challenge some of his ideas, or him challenging Ryan on some of Ryan's ideas, or giving each other a hard time.
That does sound kind of fun.
Yeah. I mean, it's worth a listen for sure.
Okay, so, fair enough.
All right. Well, there's nothing else to add. We'll thank you guys for listening, and thanks to Eric and Owen and Morelia. Check out MoreliaPythonRadio.net. I think that's what it is. But MoreliaPythons.com. I'm sure one of those will work. So yeah.
Something
if you don't know about them, then you're probably not listening to this. So yeah.
Assuredly not.
Yeah. Always. I mean, Eric's got to be the nicest guy in the world, and Owen's pretty special himself. I really enjoy Owen as well. So, all right. Well, thanks for listening, and we'll catch you again next time.
Fight Club.